Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I lost my husband when I was 32. Car accident on a rainy morning. One minute I was packing lunches for the kids, and the next I was a widow with a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old who kept asking when their dad was coming home. That was 3 years ago, and I'd only recently stopped wearing my wedding ring. Not because I was ready to move on, but because my youngest kept asking why I still wore it when her dad wasn't here anymore. Kids have a way of cutting straight through things like that. The park playdate started about 6 months after everything happened. One of the moms from my daughter's school invited me, said it would be good to get out of the house. She was right, I guess. It gave the kids somewhere to burn off energy, and I could sit on a bench and pretend to be normal for an hour or two every week. This afternoon, there were about 5 of us sitting under the pavilion while our kids climbed on the playground equipment. Someone had brought a friend along, another mother I'd never met before. She launched into conversation almost immediately, dominating most of the discussion with stories about how difficult her life was as a single parent. The struggles, the exhaustion, the loneliness, how nobody who hadn't lived it could possibly understand. I didn't say much, just nodded and listened like everyone else. Then she started asking the group for advice about school logistics. Her oldest had just moved up to junior high while her younger child was still in 3rd grade. The schools had different start times, different locations. She couldn't figure out how to get both kids where they needed to be without being late every single day. I'd dealt with the exact same problem the year before when my oldest started middle school. I'd worked out a system with another parent in the neighborhood where we alternated morning drop-offs. It had saved me so much stress that I thought maybe I could help. I started to explain what I'd done, but she cut me off mid-sentence. She told me it was different for me because I could just ask my husband for help. She said I didn't know how hard it was to be a single parent. The way she said it made my face burn, like I was some clueless person who couldn't possibly grasp the reality of her situation, like my life was easy and simple, and I had no business offering suggestions. She kept going on about how overwhelming everything was, how nobody understood her struggles, how she was doing it all alone. I didn't correct her. What would have been the point? I just sat there and let her talk while the other moms shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few weeks passed before I saw her again at another play date. I almost didn't go, but my kids had been looking forward to it. She was there again, still talking about her problems, still emphasizing how impossibly hard her life was and how nobody could relate. I stayed quiet, kept to myself. But there was someone new there this time, a mom I knew from the neighborhood who'd moved in about a year after my husband died. She'd been kind to me during those early awful months, bringing over casseroles and offering to watch the kids when I had appointments. The single mother was in the middle of another monologue about how isolated she felt in her struggles when my neighbor spoke up. She pointed out that I probably understood pretty well since I've been doing this longer than the single mother had. She nodded in my direction when she said it. The single mother's face went red. She stammered something about not realizing and turned to me with wide eyes. She apologized, saying she had no idea I was divorced too. I told her it was fine and not to worry about it. But she didn't let it go. Instead, she pivoted into trying to be friendly, like we were suddenly part of some club together. She suggested we should help each other out, trade babysitting days, carpool together. Then she got excited about the idea of taking turns watching each other's kids when we went on dates so we wouldn't have to pay sitters. She asked if that wouldn't be amazing. I told her I wasn't really dating yet. She called me honey and said I had to get back out there. She went on about how when your husband cheats on you and leaves, you can't just sit around. She said I needed to rebuild my self-esteem and that it would help. She said she was speaking from experience. I opened my mouth to respond, but my neighbor beat me to it. She told the single mother that I was a widow and that I'd date if and when I was ready. There was an edge to her voice I hadn't heard before. The single mother blinked, processed, then somehow made it worse. She said that it was still harder for her though, She explained that her husband had betrayed her and chose to leave while mine had just died. The silence that followed was suffocating. A couple of the other moms stared at their phones. One pretended to be very interested in her child on the swings. My neighbor laughed, not a polite laugh, a sharp, incredulous sound that made everyone look up. She told a single mother that was genuinely the stupidest thing she'd ever heard anyone say out loud. The single mother's mouth fell open. My neighbor continued. She said that, just so everyone was clear, the single mother had cheated on her husband for years. Plural years. She pointed out that they were already separated when he started seeing someone else. She suggested maybe the single mother should save the betrayal talk. The single mother's face drained of color. She stared at my neighbor like she'd been slapped. Then her expression hardened into something cold and furious. I stood up and grabbed my bag. I made some comment about how late it was getting and said I'd see everyone next week. I rounded up my kids and left before things could get any more uncomfortable. I'm not built for drama, never have been. I'd rather just remove myself from situations like that than stick around and watch them escalate. I didn't go back to the playdates for a few weeks after that. Made excuses about being busy, having appointments. The truth was, I just needed a break from the whole thing. I'd been best friends with her since high school. We'd been through everything together, breakups, college stress, family drama, you name it. When I got engaged last year, she was one of the first people I told. And when I found out I was pregnant a few months later, she was right there celebrating with me. What made it even more special was that she was pregnant too. Our due dates were only a few weeks apart. At first, I thought it would be this amazing bonding experience. We could go through pregnancy together, share tips, maybe even have our kids grow up as best friends. My fiancé and I had been talking about baby names for years, even before we got engaged. He comes from a big family with strong traditions, and so do I. We both loved the idea of putting family names into our baby's name. After weeks of going through old family trees and discussing different combinations, we finally settled on the perfect name. The middle name we chose was important to both of us. It belonged to my grandmother, who practically raised me when my parents were going through their divorce, and it also happened to be his great-grandfather's middle name. It felt like fate. I was so excited about it that I couldn't help sharing it with my friend during one of our regular coffee dates. I told her the full name we'd picked out, explained the family significance behind each part, and she seemed genuinely happy for us. She even said it was beautiful. By Thursday, my phone buzzed with a text from her. She said she needed to talk to me about something. I called her right away, thinking maybe something was wrong with her pregnancy. She told me that everything was fine with the baby, but then she brought up the name I'd mentioned the other day. I asked her what about it, and she asked if I was really set on the middle name we'd chosen. I felt a weird knot form in my stomach. I told her we were definitely planning to use it and asked why she was asking. She explained that the middle name I'd mentioned was the same one she'd picked out for her baby. I didn't know what to say at first. The middle name we'd both chosen was something like Marie or James. Incredibly common, used by probably thousands of families every year. I told her I didn't know she picked that one too. She said she'd had it picked out for months and couldn't believe we'd both chosen the same one. I pointed out that it was a pretty common name and that it was a family name for both of us. She said that wasn't the point. She didn't want our kids to have the same middle name because it would be confusing. I tried to stay calm and reasonable. I reminded her that it was just a middle name, not like we were using the same first name, and that most people don't even use their middle names regularly. She said that didn't matter to her. She wanted her baby to have their own name, something special that was just theirs. I explained to her again how much this name meant to me and my fiancé, how it honored my grandmother who had passed away 2 years ago, and how it connected both sides of our family. She said it was important to her too because it was her grandmother's name. I told her that since we both had good reasons to use it, I didn't see why we couldn't both honor our families. There was a long pause on her end. Then she said she just thought it was weird that I was taking her name when she'd already told me she was using it. I pointed out that she never told me she was using it before I shared mine. She said she'd mentioned it months ago when we were talking about baby names in general. I didn't remember that conversation at all, and I told her so. She said whatever, and that she guessed she'd just have to change her baby's name then. I told her she didn't have to do that and that I wasn't asking her to change anything. She said she wasn't having her baby share a middle name with mine, so one of us had to change it, and clearly it wasn't going to be me. Her tone had turned cold and accusatory. I felt blindsided. I told her this wasn't fair, that I'd had this name planned for years, since before I was even pregnant, and that it meant everything to me because of my grandmother. She asked if I didn't think it meant anything to her, then said never mind. She said she'd figure something else out and that she just wanted her baby to have something that was their own, but apparently that was too much to ask. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. My fiance came home and found me crying on the couch. When I explained what happened, he was just as confused as I was. Over the next few days, she sent passive-aggressive texts about how she was brainstorming new middle names and how it was so hard to find something meaningful now. Each message felt like a guilt trip designed to make me change my mind. I talked to my mom about it, and she reminded me that my grandmother would have been heartbroken if I didn't use her name for my baby. My fiance's family felt the same way about honoring their side. A week later, my friend posted in our group chat with other pregnant friends about how some people are inconsiderate enough to steal baby names and how she'd been forced to choose something else. Several mutual friends reached out to me privately, confused about what was happening. I tried one more time to reach out and explain that I wasn't trying to steal anything, that this was a family name that happened to be common and that there was room for both of us to use it. She responded with one sentence saying it was fine, she'd already moved on, and hoped I enjoyed my name. My fiance and I decided to stick with our original choice. When our baby was born, we gave them the name we'd always planned. My grandmother's name sits right there in the middle, honoring her memory exactly how I'd always dreamed. My former friend had her baby 3 weeks after mine. I found out through social media that she'd chosen a completely different middle name, one that, ironically, belonged to a celebrity's child from a recent headline. We haven't spoken since. My daughter had been begging me for riding lessons since she'd turned 8. We'd moved to a semi-rural area about 6 months prior, and she'd fallen in love with the horses at the stable down the road. After watching her press her face against the fence every weekend, talking to the animals like they understood every word, I finally caved and signed her up for beginner classes. The stable was well maintained and had an excellent reputation. The head trainer was a former competitive rider who'd opened the facility after retiring from the circuit. He ran a tight ship but was patient with the kids, which was exactly what I was looking for. My daughter took to it right away. Within a few weeks, she was posting correctly, understanding basic commands, and developing a genuine connection with the horses. Her assigned mare was a gentle chestnut named Rosie, and the two of them were perfect together. About 2 months into lessons, a new family joined the program. The mother showed up in fancy riding boots that had clearly never seen a stable before, carrying a leather crop she didn't know how to hold properly. Her son looked about the same age as my daughter, maybe a year older. From day one, it was obvious this woman expected her kid to be a prodigy. The problem was her son wasn't interested. He wasn't bad at riding, but he lacked the natural feel my daughter had developed. More importantly, he didn't seem to care much about the horses themselves. He treated his assigned gelding like a piece of equipment rather than a living creature. The mother couldn't stand that my daughter was progressing faster. During group lessons, I'd watch her face twist with irritation every time the trainer praised my daughter's form or her gentle handling of Rosie. She started making snide comments to other parents about how some children just have more time to practice, as if that explained away her son's lack of enthusiasm for the sport. Things came to a head during a Saturday morning session. The kids were practicing riding in a circle within the arena, maintaining proper spacing between horses. My daughter was ahead in the rotation, sitting beautifully in the saddle while Rosie moved at an easy trot. The mother's son was behind her on his gelding, and his mother was standing at the rail, watching with her usual sour expression. I was sitting on a bench near the arena entrance when I heard her voice carry across the space. She was leaning over the rail, telling her son to push my daughter off her horse. She said it loud enough that I could hear every word from where I sat. I looked up sharply, my stomach dropping. The son looked uncertain, looking between his mother and my daughter's back. The woman insisted, telling him that his horse was bigger and that he should get close and shove my daughter off the saddle. She claimed my daughter was showing off and needed to be knocked down a peg. The trainer was on the opposite side of the arena, adjusting another student's stirrups. The son urged his gelding forward, closing the distance between himself and Rosie. I stood up, ready to shout, but before I could get the words out, the boy had maneuvered his horse alongside my daughter's and shoved her shoulder hard. My daughter yelped and grabbed for Rosie's mane, managing to stay in the saddle but jerking sideways badly. Rosie, startled by the sudden movement and the other horse crowding her space, skittered to the side and tossed her head. The trainer's voice cracked across the arena like a whip. He ordered everyone to stop and halt their horses right away. All the horses came to a stop. The trainer was already walking toward the mother's son, his face dark with fury. He demanded to know what the boy thought he was doing. The boy stammered, looking toward his mother for help. He tried to say he didn't mean anything by it. The trainer cut him off, pointing out that the boy had deliberately pushed another rider. He asked if the boy had any idea how dangerous that was. He explained that my daughter could have fallen, that the horse could have spooked and thrown her, and that both horses could have panicked and hurt the other riders. The entitled woman decided to speak up from the rail. She told the trainer to calm down and claimed it was barely a tap. She added that maybe if his little star student wasn't hogging the good horse, her son wouldn't have to deal with being crowded. The trainer turned to face her slowly. He asked her to repeat what she'd just said. She told him he'd heard her perfectly well. She accused him of playing favorites since they'd started at the stable. She insisted her son deserved better instruction than watching some girl get all the attention because she was the teacher's pet. The trainer told her that her son had just committed a serious safety violation. He said the boy was done for the day and told her to collect him and leave the premises. The woman went purple in the face. She shouted that he couldn't kick her son out and reminded him they'd paid for the session. The trainer said clearly that he could, and he was doing exactly that. He explained it was his facility and he would not tolerate dangerous behavior that put other riders at risk. He told her the boy was suspended from classes pending a review. She screamed that this was discrimination and threatened to report him. She vaulted over the rail with surprising speed for someone in such impractical boots and stormed toward the trainer. The other parents were watching now, several pulling out phones. She yelled at him, asking if he really thought he could treat them this way. She claimed her son was twice the rider my daughter would ever be. The trainer held his ground. He told her she needed to leave right away before he called the police. That's when she spat directly in his face. The arena went dead silent. The trainer stood there, saliva dripping down his cheek, his expression frozen in shock and disgust. The entitled woman wasn't done. She wound up and swung her fist at his head, putting her whole body into it. He stepped back and her punch sailed past his face, her momentum carrying her stumbling forward. Two other parents who'd been standing nearby grabbed her arms right away, restraining her while someone else called the police. She shrieked at them to get their hands off her. She claimed the trainer had assaulted her son and insisted everyone had witnessed it. The stable manager appeared from the office, assessed the situation and told the woman that the entire arena was under camera surveillance and that multiple staff members had witnessed everything, including her instruction to her son to push my daughter. The police arrived within 15 minutes. The entitled woman was still screaming about lawsuits and discrimination when they led her away, in handcuffs. Her husband showed up an hour later to collect their son, looking like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. The charges included assault and battery. The video footage showed everything clearly: her instructions to her son, the push, her spitting on the trainer, and the attempted punch. Multiple witnesses provided statements. My daughter was shaken but unharmed. Rosie got extra carrots that day. The trainer pressed charges, and last I heard, the entitled woman was looking at community service and anger management classes as part of her plea deal. Her son never came back to the stable. My daughter still rides every weekend. She's working on cantering now, and Rosie still tolerates her endless chatter about everything and nothing. I moved into this place 2 months ago with 5 other women, making 6 of us total. When I first signed the lease, I was excited about the whole shared living situation. I've been bouncing between expensive studio apartments for years, and the idea of splitting rent with roommates while having my own bedroom seemed perfect. Plus, during the house viewing, everyone seemed reasonable and respectful. The first 2 weeks were honestly great. We'd established a cleaning rotation. Everyone pitched in for household supplies, and the shared spaces stayed tidy. We'd hang out in the living room together sometimes, watch movies, cook dinner as a group. It felt like one of those ideal roommate situations you hear about but rarely experience. Then things started changing. 3 of my housemates began hosting gatherings. Small at first, just a few friends over for drinks. Nobody minded at first because they'd clean up afterward. But slowly the cleanups stopped happening. The first time I walked into the kitchen after one of their parties, I found empty bottles covering every counter, half-eaten food left out, and sticky spills on the floor. The living room wasn't much better, with cushions thrown everywhere and mysterious stains on the coffee table. My other 2 housemates and I cleaned it up that time, thinking it was just an oversight. People get tired after hosting, right? We figured they'd handle it next time. They didn't. The pattern repeated itself weekly. They'd invite people over, drink and party until late, then disappear to their bedrooms while leaving disaster zones behind. My 2 reasonable housemates started getting frustrated. One of them pulled me aside after spending her Sunday morning scrubbing dried alcohol off the kitchen floor. She told me she'd counted 6 times in 3 weeks that she'd cleaned up after parties she didn't even attend. She was exhausted and sick of it. We decided to address it in a friendly way. In our house group chat, we posted a reminder about cleaning up shared spaces. We kept the tone light, even added a smiley face. The 3 of them responded quickly, apologizing and promising to do better. One even sent a bunch of thumbs up emojis. That lasted exactly 1 weekend. The next Saturday, they threw another party. Sunday morning, the kitchen looked like a tornado had hit it. My other housemates spent 3 hours cleaning everything. We sent another message in the chat, slightly stronger this time but still polite. Again, they apologized. Again, nothing changed. This went on for weeks. The cycle became predictable. Party, mess, our complaints, their apologies, temporary improvement, then right back to the same behavior. My 2 responsible housemates were getting burnt out from cleaning up after grown adults who should know better. Just a few days ago, the 3 of us spent an entire afternoon deep cleaning the kitchen and living room. We scrubbed every surface, organized everything, made the place look nice. We were exhausted but satisfied with how good the shared spaces looked. Then tonight happened. I was in my room studying when I heard music and voices downstairs. Another party. I tried ignoring it, focusing on my work. Around midnight, the noise died down. I heard doors closing when their guests left. Then I heard their bedroom doors shut too. An hour later, I got thirsty and headed downstairs for water. The scene that greeted me made my blood boil. The living room floor was covered in bottles and cans. Food was smeared on the coffee table. Someone had knocked over a plant, leaving dirt scattered across the carpet. The kitchen was even worse. Every counter had sticky rings from glasses. The sink overflowed with dishes. Half-eaten pizza sat open on the stove. Trash littered the floor. This was the same kitchen we'd spent hours cleaning just 3 days earlier. Something inside me snapped. I've been patient. I've been understanding. I tried being nice. None of it worked. These people didn't care about respecting shared spaces or the effort others put into maintaining them. I went back upstairs to my room and grabbed a trash bag. Then I returned to the war zone downstairs and got to work, but not the kind of work they expected anyone to do. I started grabbing everything they'd left out. Empty bottles went into the bag. Half-full bottles of expensive-looking alcohol went into the bag. Cans went into the bag. Food containers went into the bag. Used cups went into the bag. Everything went in together. Alcohol mixing with garbage, creating one big bag of payback. I worked through the mess, clearing every surface. The living room, the kitchen, all of it. I didn't separate recyclables or try to save anything. I just bagged it all together like the trash they'd treated it as. When I finished, I tied the bag shut and placed it on the kitchen counter where they couldn't miss it in the morning. If they wanted their leftover alcohol back, they'd have to dig through rotting food and sticky garbage to retrieve it. Good luck finding which bottles were which in that mess. Was it petty? Yes. I'm usually not like this. I prefer handling conflicts in a mature way, through communication and compromise. But we tried that approach over and over, and it did nothing. Sometimes people need a wake-up call that's more real than polite group chat messages. The next morning I heard shouting from downstairs. All three of them were in the kitchen staring at the bag. One of them opened it, then immediately pulled back from the smell of mixed garbage and alcohol. One of them yelled up the stairs, demanding to know what happened to their stuff and who did this. I came down and explained that I cleaned up their mess by treating everything they'd left out as garbage, since that's how they viewed our shared spaces. If they wanted to retrieve anything, they were welcome to sort through it themselves. They started arguing that I had no right to throw away their things. They said some of those bottles were expensive and that I'd ruined perfectly good alcohol. They demanded I replace what I'd thrown out. I pointed out that we'd asked them nicely many times to clean up after themselves. Since asking didn't work, I just sped up the cleaning process. I also reminded them that leaving alcohol sitting out in shared spaces wasn't exactly protecting their investment. My two other housemates appeared, backing me up. One of them listed every single time she'd cleaned their messes, complete with dates. She told them she was done being their maid, and that if they couldn't respect shared spaces, they could deal with what happens. The three party throwers went quiet. They looked at each other, then back at the bin bag, then at us. Nobody said anything for a long moment. That bin bag sat on the counter for 2 days. None of them touched it. Eventually, one of them threw it out without retrieving anything. Since then, their parties have stopped entirely, and when they do have people over, they clean up afterward. I usually try to keep things peaceful with my family, but there are moments when staying quiet only makes things worse. My mother's birthday was coming up in a few days, and she had been talking about what she wanted to do for it. She mentioned wanting to have a nice meal, but said she didn't want to deal with a restaurant because it wouldn't be fun with my niece running around. My sister's daughter is 5 years old and has a hard time sitting still in public places, so we all understood where my mother was coming from. We decided ordering food and eating at home would be the best option for everyone. The plan was simple enough. My parents, my sister, her daughter and I would all meet at my parents' house around 6 p.m. on Saturday. We'd order a bunch of different dishes from this place nearby that has a large menu with options for everyone. My sister showed up a bit early with my niece, and we all sat down to figure out what to order. My mother browsed through the menu and picked out a pasta dish she had been wanting to try. My father ordered himself a steak with mashed potatoes. My sister went with a garden salad and some kind of chicken sandwich. When it came to my turn, I stuck with what I always get when I'm unsure about a restaurant: chicken tenders and rice. I'm not picky just to be difficult, but there are certain textures and flavors I really don't enjoy, and I've learned over the years to order what I know I'll actually eat. 6 chicken tenders and a side of rice seemed like the right amount for me, especially since everyone else was getting their own complete meals. We placed the order, and while we waited, my niece played with her toys in the living room. My mother set the table and put out plates and napkins for everyone. The food arrived about 45 minutes later, right around 6:45 p.m. We brought all the bags to the dining room and started unpacking everything. There were containers everywhere. My mother's pasta looked amazing, my father's steak smelled great, and my sister's salad came with extra dressing on the side just like she asked. I found my container of chicken tenders and rice and set it down at my spot at the table. My mother was happy and excited, already serving herself some pasta. My father had started cutting into his steak. I opened my container and was about to grab my first tender when my sister reached across the table. Before I could say anything, she lifted the lid of my container and pulled out 2 of my chicken tenders. She put them on a small plate and set it aside. I asked her what she was doing. She told me those were for her daughter because she needed something to eat. I looked around at the table covered with food. There were 10 different dishes spread out in front of us, and she chose to take from the only thing I had ordered specifically for myself. I told her I was planning to eat all 6 tenders because that's why I ordered them. She said I didn't need 6 and that her daughter was just a kid who needed to eat. My mother looked up from her pasta and jumped into the conversation. She told me to just give 2 tenders to my niece because I had plenty. I gestured at all the food on the table. There was pasta, there was a container of garlic bread, there were roasted vegetables, there was an entire dish of fried rice that nobody had even touched yet. Any of those things could have been given to my niece, but they decided that my 6 chicken tenders were somehow community property. I pointed out that there were 10 other dishes sitting right there and suggested giving my niece something from those instead. I explained that I only had the tenders and rice because those were the only things I liked from what we ordered. Everything else on the table either had ingredients I didn't like or textures I couldn't handle. My sister said I was being selfish over chicken tenders. She added that her daughter liked them and it wasn't a big deal to share. My mother said it was only 2 pieces and told me not to make her birthday dinner difficult. That stung. Using her birthday as leverage to make me feel guilty felt manipulative, but I knew if I kept pushing back, I'd be painted as a person who ruined everything. So I gave in even though it didn't feel fair at all. I watched my sister place those 2 tenders on a plate and set it down in front of an empty chair meant for my niece. I sat down with my remaining 4 tenders and my rice, already feeling hungry and frustrated. What happened next only made things worse. My niece, who apparently desperately needed those chicken tenders, didn't even come to the table. She stayed in the living room playing with her dolls and completely ignored the plate of food that had been set out for her. I ate my 4 tenders slowly, trying not to focus on how unsatisfied I felt. My mother, father, and sister were all chatting and enjoying their meals while my niece continued playing in the other room. I asked my sister if her daughter was going to come eat. She said she would eat when she was ready, and that she was just excited and having fun right now. I finished my small meal and sat there while everyone else kept eating and talking. My mother seemed happy, which I suppose was the whole point of the evening, but I couldn't shake the annoyance building inside me. Time kept passing. 10 minutes went by, then 15, then 20. Those 2 chicken tenders sat untouched on my niece's plate. She ran past the dining room a few times, completely uninterested in eating. My sister didn't seem concerned at all. She finished her salad and sandwich and started picking at the garlic bread. My father had seconds of his mashed potatoes. My mother was telling a story about something that happened at her work. About 30 minutes after I had finished eating, those 2 chicken tenders were still sitting there getting cold. My niece hadn't even looked at them once. Finally, my sister stood up and grabbed the plate. She walked over to where I was sitting and placed it in front of me. She said I could have them now since her daughter wasn't hungry after all. I stared at the cold, untouched chicken tenders that I had been forced to give up half an hour ago. I told her I didn't want them anymore because I had already finished eating. My sister said I shouldn't let them go to waste. My mother chimed in and agreed, saying there was no point in throwing away perfectly good food. The situation felt absurd. They had insisted I give up part of my meal, made me feel guilty for wanting to eat what I had ordered for myself, and now they were lecturing me about food waste. I pushed the plate back toward my sister. I said that if wasting food was such a big concern, maybe they shouldn't have taken the tenders from me in the first place. I added that if they had just let me eat my own food or given my niece something from the many other options on the table, none of this would have happened. The room went completely silent. My father stopped eating and looked uncomfortable. My mother put down her fork and frowned at me. My sister rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic over chicken. I told her she was the one being entitled. I explained that there were 10 different dishes on this table, but she chose to take from the only thing I had ordered for myself. Then her daughter didn't even touch them, so yes, the food got wasted. But that wasn't my fault. My mother said it was supposed to be a nice birthday dinner and asked why we had to fight. I said I wasn't trying to fight. I just wanted them to understand that Next time, maybe they should respect what people order for themselves, instead of treating everything like it's meant to be shared. I got up from the table and walked toward the hallway. My mother called after me, but I needed to get away from the situation. I heard my sister saying something about me being immature and making a scene over nothing. That comment was rich coming from someone who couldn't be bothered to actually feed her own child from the abundance of food sitting right in front of her. I went to my old room and sat there for a while trying to calm down. I could hear them talking in the dining room, probably about how unreasonable I was being. About 15 minutes later, I came back out. The table was being cleared and those 2 chicken tenders were still sitting on the plate. Nobody had eaten them. Eventually, I saw my father scrape them into the trash. 2 perfectly good chicken tenders, wasted because my sister assumed she could just take my food without asking properly, and because my mother backed her up instead of seeing how unfair the whole thing was. The evening ended awkwardly. My mother opened her birthday cake and we sang to her, but the mood had shifted. Everyone was being polite but distant. I stayed for a cake and then left shortly after. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.